Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Natha Perkins, an intuitive and evolutionary astrologer, and I'm here to talk about post-election. It's like we were all waiting for an answer, and 50% of us hate the answer. So let's talk about it. I want to approach this conversation through the lens of astrology. And the way that I use and teach astrology is as a consciousness tool. It's here to help you understand yourself, your soul mission, and what you're doing here. So, the first question that I want to pose to you, depending on whether you are feeling hopeful and optimistic or you're feeling doom and gloom, is what would have made your soul choose to have this experience? Because it's so much more than just politics, and it's so much more than just my candidate won and your candidate lost. This is a deeper level of spiritual boot camp that we have all opted into on this planet at this time. And each of us has a specific soul mission, things that we came down here to learn and explore and feel, conceptualize, and understand. Whatever we are being handed right now is part of our lesson, part of our knowledge base that we are here to use to try to understand something deeper. What I've been seeing, and I talk to all of you, everyone that's on different sides of the fence. And this is not to say that I don't have my own opinion, but what does my opinion have to do with your spiritual lessons? If you have ever had a reading with me, you know that I will rarely give direct answers. I will give you answers in the form of metaphors and parables because I have a North Node in Sagittarius. I'm not supposed to be getting down in and giving yes or no answers and saying you should do this because, or you shouldn't do that because. That's not what I'm here to do. I can't control fate and destiny, and I certainly can't control yours. But I will say, I've talked to people from all perspectives about what these past 4 years have brought up for them and what are currently triggering for them. What I've been seeing is that the people that were fans of the candidate that lost are feeling despondent, betrayed by the people that voted for the candidate that won. They are feeling like the world is going to end and it's all going to go downhill from here. On the other side, I'm seeing the people that voted for the candidate that won feeling vilified, feeling unseen, accused of being ignorant or unresearched. And like I said in my first election video, we all want the same thing, but the way that we are relating to one another, where there is this silence culture, the people that voted for the incoming president feel like they are not allowed to talk about it. The people that voted for the candidate that did not win feeling like they are enraged and they just want to burn the place down. And I'm intentionally not using candidate names because that is beside the point. The point is the bigger picture here, the bigger piece of work, as we all look at how we are responding to the excitement, the disappointment, the optimism, the fear. And I'm saying, as somebody that has held a middle ground through all of this and seen both sides very clearly, we're all on the same team. We all want the same things. We are all responding to our spiritual boot camp a little bit differently because we've each been handed a different set of tools. My previous election video, still a good one to listen to even after the election because it gives you some really helpful ways for managing these energies moving forward. I've also been talking all month about Scorpio. You can listen to the Scorpio episodes as we're talking about our deep fears and also our deep traumas, because a lot of people are being faced with their deep traumas. So it goes a little bit deeper than just what's happening right now in November of 2024. We're all being faced with these things that possibly came from this life, possibly came from past lives. And I have noticed this really significantly since 2020. If we look at the trajectory of everything that has happened since 2020, there is a pandemic. So think about it like this. People who have had past lives or their early childhood that have been colored by illness, the fear of illness, the fear of dying from an illness, you're going to be extra triggered by a pandemic. And then you have the people who have past lives that have related to being confined, to having a loss of their freedom, to not being able to move around the world safely and freely, we're going to be super triggered by lockdowns. Then we move into cancel culture. And if you have had past lives or you had flavors of this in your young life, whether it was through your parents, maybe things that happened to your parents that you observed, where speaking out, sharing your truth, saying the wrong thing got you punished, in some cases, got you killed. And we move into cancel culture. And then we come to the vaccine issues. Now, if you were somebody that had past lives or early childhood experience where you felt responsible for people, you didn't want to hurt people, you wanted to take care of them, you felt that somehow their safety was on your shoulders, then you might have been somebody that felt that vaccines were immediately the right thing to do, then very panicked that other people weren't doing that. On the flip side, if you've had past lives or childhood experiences where you felt medically experimented on or that medical things were done against your will, then of course you're going to be triggered by the idea of being, quote, forced to get a vaccine. The reason that I'm laying all of this out for you is because I want to just acknowledge that we all come to the table with a very unique set of fears and a very unique set of circumstances and experiences that are going to be really easily triggered when big things come across our field of awareness. Now, we've also seen this overarching control. So as I've talked about in previous episodes, when Saturn and Pluto met in the sky in January of 2020, Saturn being the governing forces, the boundaries, the limitations, the karma, the rules, the regulations, the government, and Pluto being the great transformer, the one that comes in and exposes the underbelly, forces everybody to look more deeply into their experience. Okay, these two came together. So, of course, astrologers all over were predicting that there were going to be themes that were very similar to what we all went through in 2020 and beyond. And we have seen through the last 4 years this overarching power, whether it's the governing bodies that are trying to make people do a certain thing, make people think a certain thing, make people follow certain things, right? And I'm being vague intentionally because we all related to a lot of that governing control differently. Some of us really trusted that the government had our back. Some of us automatically had mistrust of the government. And so we're all coming to this from very different perspectives. And that's part of what we're doing collectively. We are acknowledging that we are a collective of individuals. We all have our individual experiences, beliefs, yearnings, passions, love languages, etc. And we are all functioning as a group. And it gets really complicated. People that are raised in different religions are always going to have different values. People that are raised in different cultures are always going to have different values. So here we find ourselves sitting here post-elections, and nobody feels that great about any of it. So I want to just bring some levity to this. And I want to remind all of us, anybody that's listening to this podcast, watching this YouTube channel, you are here on a spiritual awakening path, which means that in some ways you have to take yourself out of your immediate experience. And what I mean by that is the immediate experience of rage, pain, suffering for those that feel that their side was the best side and lost, or gloating, righteousness, if you're feeling attacked, misunderstood, blamed, not listened to, if you're on the side whose candidate was chosen. So any of this is all the ego activity, right? This is all of us trying to get in there, like I talked about in my Virgo episodes, getting in there and meddling. I got to get in there. This is my belief. This is what's right. This is what's wrong. I can do all of this efforting so that I feel supported. So we're moving out of that ego sense, which is I'm right, you're wrong. And we are moving into the bigger perspective, which is Sagittarius. It's also Piscean. When we zoom out and we see things through the bigger picture, first of all, that's beneficial because we can detach from what we think we know. And we're taking the perspective of Maybe everything is happening exactly as it should be. Maybe I am being triggered into looking at some of my deeper issues so that I can process them, eliminate the parts that are keeping me held down, sad, limited, addicted. And I can really understand and reclaim my power as I move into deeper knowledge. So when I talk about Sagittarius, this energy is where we are looking at everybody's viewpoints. We're reading all of the philosophical things. We're understanding that just because we think something is the right way doesn't mean that it's exactly the right way for everybody. And there's a lot of benefit in being able to understand the nuance of different opinions, different values. Doesn't mean that we have to take those on as our own, and it doesn't mean that we have to change what we think we believe. But in the same way that if you were going to go out to a dinner party, you would want to get to know each person at the table a little bit better because they are interesting people, even if they're really different than you. You wouldn't turn your back on somebody at the dinner party because you thought, well, they're different than me. I want nothing to do with them. So there's a lot of value right now, especially in just taking a bigger perspective and understanding that the more we know, the more powerful we are. And then we also look at that Piscean bigger perspective and we say, all right, if there's a higher power out there, and I think it's safe to say that all of us in our own ways have our higher power that we believe in, that we feel is with us, that we know exists. I'm going to trust that this higher power has my back and is guiding me in the direction of what my soul came down here to do, which is to grow and evolve. Then I have to trust that whatever is happening right now in the world, in my own psyche, in my own emotional body, is for my benefit. And I have to trust that on the other side of this, I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, wow, I'm so glad that happened. So take a deep breath and just begin to notice what it feels like to pull air into your lungs. Notice what it feels like in your nervous system as you do the simple act of conscious breathing, of reacquainting yourself with your center, with your own core. And if you want, you can put your hand on your heart. I have my other hand on my stomach, and I'm just grounding. And I encourage you to keep grounding and keep coming back. So we leave the ego, but we don't leave our center. We don't leave this present moment. And there is something powerful about looking around where you are in any given moment and reminding yourself, I am safe right now. I am okay. I am warm. I have food. I can move my body. Because right now we're playing around with all of these different dimensions of being human and being spiritual. We're looking at our perception in our mind, right? And our minds will take us to many different places. Most of the time, they're not very useful places. And if social media and the conversations that I've had with friends and family over the last few days have anything to say about it, the minds are going wild. The minds are bouncing around in the worst case scenario land, and that's not useful. That's just your mind trying to create stories and create problems for you to solve. And in a way, we thank our minds. Great, because the more problems that are coming up to be quote unquote solved by us, the deeper understanding we get of what's really happening. So I encourage you over the next few months to continue to inquire deeper underneath what's really happening, underneath the problem du jour, and say, why am I feeling so angry? Why am I feeling so betrayed? Why am I feeling so delighted? Why am I feeling like I'm on the wrong side of history? Why am I feeling like I'm on the right side of history? What does all of this mean? because there are deeper lessons for each of us, and each of us have unique lessons in all of this. And I will say that astrologically, as the curtains continue to part on these people, powers, these entities, groups that we look to for our guidance, as we are beginning to see with more and more clarity that they are imperfect, that they very likely do not have our best interest at heart. And we'll see as Pluto continues to move into Aquarius that now we are looking at bigger questions around what needs to change. How can we improve? How can we be more humanitarian? How can we acknowledge the nuance of collective? The truth is that it's not just about each and every single one of us. And every time that we look at a governing body and say, that's selfish, they're power hungry, all they want is money. If we turn that mirror to ourselves and we say, uh-oh, where am I being selfish and power hungry? And I don't mean we're trying to go for world domination. I'm saying we're trying to hold on to our power. I want things to be the way I want them to be. So as above, so below. So this is all huge spiritual lessoning time for all of us. And it's multifaceted. There's not one single answer that's going to apply to all of this. Turn the mirror around, look at where you're power hungry yourself. But I also say, as the North Node is in Aries, that this is the time where we are learning how to deeply advocate for what we feel is right and true. And that doesn't mean necessarily advocating by marching in the streets and casting your vote. Those things can be useful. But this is advocating for what you know to be true in your own heart. And probably what most of us know to be true is that arguing, condemning, rejecting, resenting, shaming, blaming, those things aren't really true to who we are. They don't make us feel good, and they ruin our relationships with others. Those aren't the dishes that we want to bring to the potluck of our collective gathering. And so when those things show up in our system, that is our ding, ding, ding to say, oh, I need to look within. I need to figure out what this is triggering for me. It's triggering something deep, something from my past that's unresolved, a time when I was hurt or rejected or abandoned in my past. Or it's bringing up that fear that I hold in my nervous system that says I have to fix things or else. Maybe you were raised in a family where your parents were always at war and you felt like you had to be the peacemaker. You know, these are entryways into really deep and informative inquiry for each of us. As I mentioned in the Scorpio shadow episode, there's something called the observer effect. When particles, like electrons, behave differently when they're being observed versus when they are not being observed. So our emotions, our experiences are like this. We have difficult experiences as children, and for the most part, those went unobserved. We didn't have the context or the skills to be able to soothe ourselves. The adults weren't able to soothe us or explain things either. By using what feels really difficult and sharp in your experience right now, using that as an entryway into a deeper observation and a deeper understanding can go a million miles. And that's what we're doing as we are in a massive shift on the planet. We're never going to see the shift that just happens out there and then shifts the rest of us coming down. We are going to see the shift that happens here within us, and that's going to go out. So we're here doing shift work together. So I really encourage you, when you are feeling angry or you need to blame or shame somebody else, or even feeling sad and depressed and powerless, this is where we really get to step in and we really get to use our skill set and these tools that we've been learning. But say, no, I'm going to take my power back. I don't have to take my power back by marching in the streets and by telling other people that they're bad. I take my power back by being with myself, by being the very best father, mother, authority figure that I can possibly be to myself. I'm kind. I'm loving. I'm accepting. I'm listening. I'm attuned. I'm taking accountability. I'm validating. All of this stuff that we look at and we say, I want people to give this to me. I feel like nobody loves me, cares for me, respects me. They don't understand me. We're giving that to ourselves. We're learning how to support ourselves in that way. Then it doesn't matter so much what the external governing bodies are doing. We are creating change at a local level. Local meaning our mind, our bodies, our spirits. And as we move into 2025, we have three outer planets changing signs. Pluto moving into Aquarius. We have Neptune moving into Aries. Uranus moving into Gemini. These are outer planets. These speak to the nature of our collective. We know that there are energetic shifts coming. So we can't just say in November of 2024, we're all screwed, because we are not screwed, not at all. This is it. This is the revolution we've all been waiting for. All right. I hope this was helpful.